Hi, in this video, we're going to talk about why you're insecure in your relationships. We're going to hit these four main components: partners chosen and attracted to, identifying and managing relationship insecurity, the relationships you want as opposed to the ones you feel you need, and the beliefs about yourself and your identified other. So let's get into it. Please like, share, and subscribe, and comment, and here we go. So partners that you are chosen to be attracted to. I think that the best way to look at this is to consider Christmas morning or whatever big holiday that you get a lot of gifts. You get up in the morning and you're going out and you see three big boxes. They're all about the same shape, right? One is a silver, shiny silver box. The other one is blue, a shiny blue box. The other one is red, shiny red box, right? So you open up the silver one and you tear it open and stuff, and you open it up, and let's say it's a Cabbage Patch doll, right? And it's Cabbage Patch doll. It's this little doll thing, you know, and you're super excited. You're like, wow, Cabbage Patch doll. It's really nice. It's fun. I can't wait. It's really cool. What could be in the blue box? So then you go to the blue box and you tear open the blue box. And when you tear open the blue box, lo and behold, it's a Cabbage Patch doll. And you're like, oh, it's another Cabbage Patch doll. Okay, well, two, I can probably make two work. Okay. So you're like, all right, I'm going to go to the next one. The next one's going to be different, right? Do you see where this is going? So then you go to the third one and you tear open that third box, right? And you open it up and you pull it out and it's a Cabbage Patch doll. So what does this tell us about our partners, about our relationships? Well, interestingly, what happens is that when we develop our attachment patterns and our attractions, and we usually develop them in our adolescence, right around maybe 13 to 16, is when we first start to really identify what we're attracted to, what we really like, the types of partners that we gravitate to. And a lot of this, it looks like it's these shiny packages, right? It looks like, oh, I want these shiny packages and things like that. But what happens is over time, because of these attachment patterns, these attachments and connections to others or certain features or personality traits, what happens is you end up with the same Cabbage Patch doll over and over and over again. So by the time you get to that red box, you're kind of like, oh, what is going on? What is wrong? Where's the issue? Why am I always dating or with someone who has A, B, or C, right? Maybe they're a little narcissistic. Maybe they are neglectful. Maybe they're not very nice. Maybe, and regretfully, maybe they're violent or abusive. Could be verbal, sexual, or physical abuse or something like that. So why do you do that? Why do we gravitate to these things? Again, we go back to that attachment pattern. What happens is that it fits with our understanding. As we were developing, when we were developing these attachment patterns, these connections, these attractions to others, we picked up these components. Sometimes it's the environment that you grew up in. Sometimes it's your friend group. It can come from a wide variety of different sources. What happens is that as you get older, if you first don't build the insight into the tendency or those different factors, then you don't know. Then you're always opening up that same package and it's always that same Cabbage Patch Kid, right? But you've got to do it differently. You have to learn what those traits are that you're attracted to. And that doesn't mean that they're bad, because some of those traits are going to be good. Some of those traits that you're going to like. But what about the ones that take away from those relationships, that add to that insecurity in your relationships? And that's what we want to hone in on. We want you to be able to identify those things that lead you to get into these relationships, that build your sense of insecurity, that feed those components of a personality disorder. If you have one, like BPD, could be NPD, borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, or any of the others. So we want to look into that, but then we want to change it, and you can change it. Building that awareness makes it possible for you to recognize those traits and then do it differently. It doesn't mean you have to change, completely. And now you don't want any packages that are wrapped, and you don't want anything that looks like a doll whatsoever, whether it's a Cabbage Patch doll or it's a Barbie doll, Ken doll, whatever other doll might be out there. I don't know. But a different type of doll, different type of person. So you don't want to completely scrap it, right? We don't want to split on this where we're like, okay, it has to be exactly like this, which is your Cabbage Patch, Or it has to be exactly like this, which has nothing to do with Cabbage Patch. That's not true. We want to find those components, but you have to dig deep. You have to look into that and those components. So not only are you aware of it, so that you can consciously recognize where it comes from and how to make different choices. So then if we go on and we're identifying and managing that relationship insecurity. So what are those components? A lot of times it can be abandonment. You're afraid that your partner is just going to arbitrarily leave you and you're out of business. That's it. The relationship's over and you're going to be surprised and you're going to be destitute and then you're never going to be with anyone ever again. Or is it this sense of emptiness? And if you're not with this person, then no one can love you. So there's no way for you to feel full. And this is something that a lot of folks that I work with who have borderline personality disorder or borderline personality disorder traits, and they worry about that if I'm not with him, her, they, whoever it is, then I'll be completely alone. I'll have this sense of desolation inside, this sense of emptiness. It's like being caught in a desert, right? And you desperately want water. But what happens is you only get water from this partner. And you have this intense desire because if you don't have it, you'll die of dehydration. And obviously no one wants that, but that becomes the fear. That's part of what feeds that insecurity. And then sometimes it becomes rejection sensitivity. And part of that rejection is that perhaps you have a lot of jealousy or a lot of envy. Could be towards your partner, could be your partner's friends, and it could be about situations, could be your partner's employer, could be anything. And what happens is that relationship insecurity is that it can become so intense that you don't even realize what it's about. You don't recognize or connect it to that sense of emptiness, that fear of dying of dehydration, or that sense of being abandoned and then never being loved again. So that rejection sensitivity can kick off those other two main components. And you can really develop this sense of jealousy, envy, controlling your partner, trying to keep your partner in this little cage, right? All of a sudden, they're this little chick in this tiny little cage and you can't let them out because if you let them out, then you're going to be rejected. Then they're going to leave you. Then goes back to that abandonment, goes back to that emptiness, goes back to that relationship insecurity. And it's this fear. And actually what happens is that in many ways, because you've trapped your chick, right? The little baby chick, because you've trapped your chick, the chick can only survive for so long. And sometimes the chick may adapt, but it becomes a very maladaptive existence. And that's when you have these relationships that are very complex, often filled with passive-aggressive behaviors or just outright aggressive behaviors. You have to let the chick out. You've got to let the chick hang out with other chicks. You have to have faith and security, a feeling of security in yourself that if that person leaves, it's their loss. And I know that that is a tough, tough thing to get to or believe, but I believe that holding that view helps us build what we're going to talk about next, is building that relationship you want, not need. Because the problem becomes, just as I told you about the chick and the abandonment and emptiness and rejection sensitivity issues, is that you feel like you need this relationship. Without this person in your life, again, you die of dehydration. You starve to death. But the starving isn't from food or sustenance. It's from love and compassion and companionship. And we all need that to varying degrees. And it can be very scary. But when you add need to that relationship, it adds a level of stress and pressure to that relationship that, again, puts that chick back in that cage. It locks up that chick. And what happens is you end up again in those relationships that have a lot of issues. And those issues, they could be, again, it could be aggressiveness, passive aggressiveness, other types of factors that seem to come out in all of your relationships over and over and over again. So we have to visit that. We have to change that need to a want. A want relationship is one where you do feel comfortable, where you're okay with being away from your partner, where you have some physical distance from your partner, but physical distance doesn't mean there's emotional distance. But if you have a poor understanding or you have poor insight or impaired understanding into what those relationships are, what those traits and factors are in your partner, like we talked about those attachment patterns, you do feel this need to have this person there as opposed to building the want of the relationship. A want relationship is one that you feed each other, you grow together. Are there guarantees in relationships? Absolutely not. But relationships, like life, are built on probabilities. And what that means is that if you engage in positive relationship behaviors, you try to nurture the relationship, you try to understand your partner, give them space to do what they need to do, and you have space to work on yourself and build your own sense of self, it increases the probability of a healthy relationship that lasts. There's no guarantee. But if we go to a need relationship, if we go to one that has a lot of relationship insecurity, that encourages abandonment, encourages emptiness, that is built on this rejection sensitivity, and we lack the insight into those traits and patterns which bring out a lot of these insecure relationship issues, that we end up with a high probability of a negative relationship, a negative outcome, and the dissolution of those relationships. And of course, that's not what you want. Because also when we get to our last point is beliefs about you and your identified other. And what that means is that it becomes an enmeshment between you and your partner. It's like the two of you are just blending together, right? It's making the cake and you're putting all those ingredients together. And once you mix it in, you can't unmix it. So what happens is that you hold that idea that, yeah, that's a relationship. We're going to make this cake and it's going to be the best cake that anybody's ever seen. It's going to be this amazing, amazing cake. We're going to put it all together. The problem is that in doing that, you lose yourself. And in every relationship, and I have a video on this as well, that in every relationship, there are three of us. That there's you, your partner, and you and your partner in the relationship. If you only blend together, you have enmeshment. You have enmeshment of ingredients of each other, but you can't only go so far, can only go so far. So you end up in this sense of confusion. You're trying to define yourself by the relationship. You're trying to define yourself by how that person sees you, how they evaluate you. But a lot of times in these relationships that tend to be more need-based and that have a lot of relationship insecurity, again, you end up in a really sort of tumultuous, unhealthy relationship that you can't count on. So that identified other, they have a lot of those Cabbage Patch doll traits, and that gets you down that road, that same road that you've been on so many times of getting into a relationship. Everything looks good. It's looking nice. It's going along, and then it changes and it turns negative, and then it dissolves. And then on to the next, and it's Cabbage Patch, Cabbage Patch, Cabbage Patch, Cabbage Patch. And it's the same. You have to slow down. We have to look at those initial components. We have to identify where that relationship insecurity is coming from, those components that kick it off, and focusing on the want relationship, not the need relationship, and separating your sense of self from your relationship. And that identified other doesn't determine your value. You do. And that's the most important thing that I hope you take away from this video. So I hope you found it helpful. Like, share, and subscribe. Comment as well. And I'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.